Perfect. And you'll just let people in as they come in, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone and good morning. It is absolutely a pleasure to be with you today to talk about access to capital and some alternative sources that you may not be aware of. My name is Lara Hodgson. I'm the co-founder, president, and CEO of NOW Corp. And as we go through the presentation today, we'll share a little bit about what we do, but essentially we work with small businesses across the United States to enable them to get paid immediately so that they can use their own revenue to fund the growth of their business. And so we are the luckiest people on the planet because we get to work with people like you who are truly the heroes of our economy. And not a day goes by that Haddy and I and the rest of our team are not just amazed by the things that our clients do. With me today is also Haddy Coulibaly. And Haddy is our VP of credit. She oversees the operations at NOWaccount. And so she's going to join me. And as we share with you some of what we've seen clients do that has differentiated them as they grow and compete with their competitors, and then things that we've seen that perhaps have not worked as well for our clients, we want to share both the things you may not know about that could give you that competitive edge, but also things that we've seen other people kind of traps they've fallen into so that hopefully you can avoid those traps with your own business. And so the way we're going to do this, I'm going to just start to go through some slides that give a little bit of the history and the context of what we've seen in the market and what we've experienced ourselves. And then Haddy and I are going to sort of town hall it. We're going to tag team to share with you examples of what we've seen from some of our clients in different industries around the United States. And then, of course, we would love to answer any questions that you have and help in any way. So with that, let me share my screen and hopefully you can still see us as we talk. But can everyone see the screen? Thumbs up? Yes. All right. So as I mentioned, Haddy and I are going to talk to you today about just some alternative solutions that you may not have been aware of that you could take advantage of. And of course, the story I always start with is sort of my own story, which is why we started NOWaccount to begin with. And it's the story of a couple of serial entrepreneurs that had started some businesses and quickly learned that starting a business is easy, but scaling a business is really, really hard. And so about 10, 12 years ago, my business partner, Stacey Abrams, who everyone now knows who that is, but obviously she's had a huge impact outside of just the business world. But Stacey and I had started a company called Nourish, and it was a patented spill-proof water product for children, really focusing on children's health. We also had a consulting firm where we did a lot of government contracting and infrastructure work. And what we discovered with both of those businesses is as we grew and our clients got larger and larger and our contracts got larger and larger, it took longer and longer to get paid. And we could not understand why that was. It seemed like we were doing everything right. It seemed like our business should be profitable, but we felt like we were on a treadmill and we were just literally growing to death. And so we went to some of our suppliers and we said, look, what should we do? And they said, oh, you just have a working capital issue. Everybody has that. Now, you don't tell Stacey and I that everybody has a problem, because then that's what we have to focus on is if everyone has a problem, then the existing solutions must not be very good. And so we started to really look at what was going on. And what we discovered is when we had been selling to small companies, most of the time they paid us with a credit card. But as we sold to these larger businesses, they wanted an invoice with net 30 or net 60 or net 90 terms. And even though the invoice said net 30, it didn't mean you were actually going to get paid in 30. That was just a suggestion. And so there was a mismatch between us having to pay our employees, pay our suppliers, and then when we were eventually going to get paid. And so we went and looked at all of the obvious solutions. Go get a line of credit, go try factoring, finance your receivables. And we just couldn't get comfortable with the fact that why were we borrowing money when we were really the free bank? because small businesses actually lend more than they borrow. It's just that your loan is an invoice. And when you send an invoice and it says net 30, you're essentially making a free loan to your customer for 30 days. So why would we have to turn around and go borrow money when we just gave our money away for free? We just decided there had to be a better way. And so what we started to look at is what else existed in the market. And we were having lunch one day, and it occurred to us that businesses that sell to consumers, like retail stores, grocery stores, coffee shops, restaurants, they never wait to get paid. And we thought that was so unfair because we were having to wait to get paid. And what we realized is that those restaurants and retailers, they did used to wait to get paid. Because when I was a little girl, every month my dad would get paid and my mother would go pay the Thrift Town bill and she would go pay the Riches bill. And so back then, retailers waited to get paid at the end of the month, and they were essentially like a free bank to their customers. But when the credit card system came out, everything changed. Because when you walk into Kroger or Walmart or Target and you swipe your card for payment, they get paid the next day. And it's not a loan, it's not factoring, it's not any sort of financy thing. They get their actual revenue immediately. And for that service, they pay a merchant fee of about 3%. But when and if you pay your Visa bill, that's not their risk. If you don't pay your Visa bill, it's not Walmart's problem. So we said, well, that's interesting. How could you apply this concept of the credit card to the world of business to business or business to government, like government contracting? Because purchasing cards and credit cards are very rarely used. They're used sometimes, but in the scheme of the market, it's less than 2%. And so what we realized is the credit card doesn't work in B2B or business to government because there's a mismatch. If you asked any supplier, would you prefer to take a card or send an invoice and wait? They will always say, give me a card. But if you ask the customer, would you prefer to pay with a card or get an invoice and pay when you feel like it? They're always going to get an invoice and pay when I feel like it. And so we created NOWaccount to connect the green dots. Essentially, NOWaccount allows the supplier, when you deliver your good or service, if they're not willing to prepay you with a purchasing card and you'd like to get paid immediately, you process the transaction on your NOWaccount, you get paid your actual revenue, not a loan, not factoring, your actual revenue immediately, minus a one-time 3% merchant fee. So it feels like your customer handed you a Visa, but they didn't. They still get the invoice. It still says net 30. They're still not going to pay it for 60. They pay when and how they normally would, but the remittance address is a lockbox that we control. So for them, nothing changes. For you, you're finally in control of your own business, deciding when and how you get paid, regardless of when and how they get paid, or when and how they pay, rather. So how do we think about capital in general? One of the things I often find is people will come to us and everyone knows that you need capital to grow, right? You need money to make money. The challenge is that we've always limited ourselves to thinking that capital comes either in debt, like a loan or a line of credit, or as equity, which is really the most expensive capital you could ever get because now you're married. Like when you take in an equity partner, you have to live with them for life. But the challenge is when we take in that line of credit or that equity, what do we do with it? Because if you're putting that money in your own business, you're buying equipment, you're hiring a person, you're building out a facility, you're buying raw materials, that makes total sense. But if you're taking that expensive money in and then you're giving it to your customer for free, that doesn't make any sense. But that's what we've been told is the cost of doing business. And we've decided that the cost of doing business should not be your business. If you think about it, for most companies, your largest asset is accounts receivable. But it's the one asset that banks and lenders really have trouble with because it doesn't match well with what they're doing. And so as we think about our economy growing and shifting to more service, that's actually a challenge because for a service-based business, your biggest asset is people. And people are funny because they like to be paid every 2 weeks, not net 90. And so that doesn't match very well. When I often hear businesses, they come to us every day and they'll call Haddy or they'll call myself and they'll say, I'm looking for capital. And my question is always, for what? Because I think a lot of people get caught up in the need to raise capital. And if at any point in time your goal is to raise capital, then you've forgotten what you're really trying to do. Because nobody wakes up on a Monday morning and says, you know what, I think I'll get a loan today for fun. The only reason you're looking to raise capital is because you need to do something in your business. You have a big government contract you're going after. You have a new customer you'd like to onboard. You have a new product you're trying to take to market. You need a piece of equipment to grow your capacity. So your goal is to buy the piece of equipment. Capital is just something you need to do that. So make sure that you never get so myopic on, I'm trying to raise capital, that you forget you're really trying to do something else. The capital is just the enabler. And if you keep the capital in its appropriate place, then you can be a little bit more unbiased or non-emotional in the type of capital that you get. Because it really does matter that you get the right type of capital at the right time for the right use. And so I always ask people to discriminate in your mind between how you run your business and how you fund your business, because they're not the same thing. And very often when we get those confused, we end up with the wrong type of capital. So this chart on the right is an extremely simplified view of almost any company, right? You sell a good or service, revenue comes in, it can come in the form of cash or credit card or wire, ACH, what have you. You use that cash to operate your business. Some of that cash leaves your business in the form of expenses, both operating and capital, and hopefully some of it, more than not, stays in your business to invest and start the left to right flow all over again tomorrow. That's how you run your business. So the left to right is how you run your business. The top and the bottom, debt and equity, those are how you fund your business. And so there are times when in order to run your business, you need to inject debt capital or equity capital to acquire the components you need to run your business. But what often happens is if the left to right flow gets clogged up, like a clog in your drain, we kind of panic and we grab debt or we grab equity. But it's not really solving the problem. You still have a clog in your drain. You've just covered up the pain for a short period of time. And so it's kind of like if you've ever had, I'm a runner, and every once in a while my knee gets inflamed. And so I take Advil and then I feel better. But if I go for a run, I'm probably going to hurt my knee more because it's not really fixed. I just deaden the pain for a little bit. So make sure that you really are dissecting what is causing the backup before you go get the capital so that you make sure you get the right type. And I'll give you a couple of different examples of how different types of capital serve different needs. So one of the things that we've learned in 2020 is that cash is king, right? Everyone loves to say that. Cash is king. My response is always, well, if cash is king, then flow is queen. Because in the word cash flow, the most important part is actually flow. And it makes sense because she is the one that dominates. If you've ever played chess, you cannot win without the queen. And so cash is great, but if your cash is not flowing into your business, if it's sitting in your customer's bank account, that's not going to help you very much. What we've also learned in 2020 is that the supply chain of cash is not what we thought it was. So I'll give you an example. When COVID hit, there was this strange reality that nobody could find toilet paper, right? Toilet paper was missing everywhere. And I wondered why that was, because if you think about COVID, it doesn't require a need for more toilet paper in most cases, nor did COVID shut down toilet paper production. So why was it that there was no toilet paper on the shelves? Well, what happened is that COVID busted the supply chain. The bulk of manufacturing of toilet paper was getting packaged in large bulk boxes to be sent to office buildings, entertainment venues, warehouses where there's lots of people. that big box that has hundreds of rolls of toilet paper couldn't be stuck on the shelf of Kroger or Walmart. It wasn't packaged right. So there was plenty of toilet paper, and there were plenty of people that needed toilet paper. But what happened is they were no longer meeting one another because people had moved to their homes. Toilet paper wasn't going to the home, it was going to the loading docks of office buildings. And so capital is the same way. Small businesses have a natural flow of cash in and through their business. We thought that the flow of cash into businesses was banks. And the reason we thought that was, well, that would make sense. That's where most businesses get their cash. Except that when the government tried to get cash into small businesses and they gave it to all the big banks, a few months later, we all stood up and said, wait a minute, small businesses haven't gotten any cash. Where did it go? Well, the banks weren't doing anything wrong. The banks were sending the money where they normally send the money. But it turns out it wasn't small businesses. It was more medium-sized businesses. And what we realized is that the natural supply chain of cash into a small business is actually commerce. So think about it. Most of the money that comes into your business comes from your customers. It comes from revenue. It comes from doing work. And so one of the things we've been working with a lot of large organizations and government entities on is if you really want to help small businesses, buy stuff from them, because that's how a small business engine operates. You know, you can do stimulus and put little lubricants on it, but without fuel, which is revenue, the engine cannot run. And so think about how that revenue flows through your business. With NOWaccount, what we discovered is most revenue flows very slowly. And it's because when you deliver your good or service, your customer is waiting 30, 60, 90 plus days to get you paid. If you could get paid immediately, just like Kroger does when you swipe your Visa card, then it's possible that your own revenue from yesterday's shipment is actually what could fund the creation of tomorrow's shipment. And so as we started to study these dynamics, we looked at ways that we could help these businesses. So one of the things, and actually, let me look, because there's, I want to go back to this one slide, because I thought we actually had some more detail behind it. All right, so when you think about running versus funding your business, there are two things that cause a backup. And can you guys see my screen? Haddy, because I can't see you anymore.
No, you're not sharing.
I'm not sharing.
Yeah.
I thought I may have messed that up. Hold on just a second. Joys of technology. Okay. Now I'm back. All right. Okay. So as you think about how you run your business, there are two dynamics that can cause that flow to get backed up. One of the dynamics is that your suppliers need prepayment. And that is becoming more and more, unfortunately, more and more common, particularly in things like protective equipment, medical equipment, because there's so much demand. The suppliers are taking advantage of that, and they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to ship to you unless you pay me ahead of time. And so that would cause a backup in your flow, right? Because your money has to leave before the new money from revenue comes in. And if that is the case, then borrowing on a line of credit makes sense, because you're going to borrow on that line. You're going to pay that supplier ahead of time so that they will actually send you the raw materials. And then as soon as you sell your good or service, the revenue can pay back that line of credit. That works perfectly. You could also see if you could get your supplier to give you terms, right? Let your supplier fund some of that. Now, like I said, depending on your industry, that may or may not be available in this COVID world. And there's an unfortunate reality, which is a dynamic that we are really trying to fight here, sort of advocate for small businesses. Ironically, that supplier that is requiring you to prepay, they don't require their large customers to prepay, which is strange because the large customer actually could prepay. But because you're a small business and you don't have the balance sheet that your large competitors do, you're treated somewhat unfairly because they don't want to take that risk on you. And so one of the things we've seen is when clients use NOWaccount, because we're paying you right away, you have more cash on your balance sheet, but because it's not a loan, you don't have a liability. You have cash, no AR, and no liability, which allows you to have a stronger balance sheet, which allows you to go to your supplier and negotiate terms. Because you can say, look, I have a strong balance sheet. I'm not risky to you, so you should be able to give me at least net 30. So one of the things you can do is start to use tools like a NOWaccount to build up your balance sheet strength so you can get the types of terms that your larger competitors are. But in that case where you have to prepay, a line of credit is also not a bad solution, or supplier funding is not a bad solution. Or if there's a way that you can use a credit card to pay them up front, knowing that you're going to get paid as soon as you ship and you can pay that credit card bill down. So those are some solutions. The second scenario is that your customer is taking longer to pay. So if your DSO is bigger than like 3 or 4 days, chances are you are funding your customer and there's a mismatch. That's where, again, if they are willing to pay you with a credit card, that's a great solution. And certainly in some cases, there are P cards, your customer will use a P card. Make sure, however, that your customer, a lot of times we are seeing recently large companies going to their small suppliers and saying, here's an early pay program. We'd like for you to sign up for it. Or in some cases, they're forcing you to sign up for it, or you have to give them net 60 or net 90. The problem with that program is there's usually a kickback to your customer. So your customer is, in a sense, trying to be the role of your financing. From a power perspective, you do not want your customer, which is your source of revenue, to also be your source of capital. That is bad. And it's bad because you were in a weak position before, you're in a doubly weak position now because they control everything. They control when you get paid, they control what they pay you, and they control when and if they're going to pay you. So be very leery of these customers who come to you and say, here's an early pay program, you have to sign up for it. They're getting money out of that, and they're using it as a way to extract more pricing benefits from you. Because what'll happen over time is they'll take a longer time to pay, and you still have to give them that discount. So you're getting sort of doubly scarred. But if your customer is taking 30 days or more to pay, that's really where either get them to pay you with a card or use something like a NOWaccount to get paid faster. That is not when you want to use a line of credit. Because what happens is you're now borrowing on a line of credit, you're adding debt to your balance sheet, you're lending that to your customer for free, and you don't control when they pay. So the interest rate on your line of credit is out of your control. You could end up paying 30 days of interest, you could end up paying 90 days of interest. And if your customer doesn't pay, now you've paid 90 days of interest and it all gets charged back to you. You have no way of paying back that line. So a line makes sense if you have to prepay a customer, like on a purchase order. It does not make sense if you're using it to wait 30 days to get paid from your customer. So those are the two scenarios. And I just wanted to make sure I shared that before we jumped into questions. Haddy, before we open it up for questions, are there any scenarios? What are you seeing now? Maybe an example of something that was kind of brilliant on the part of a customer that they used it to sort of maybe win a bid against their bigger competition? Or is there something you've seen kind of on the risky side where it's like, oh, this customer really got hurt by that, don't do it?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Great information shared. I mean, that's a lot. But with COVID, I think we should really be mindful of risk management. Most importantly, risk is really important, and it's hurting a lot of clients, whether they know it or not. We're in the business of managing risk, and we can see it and share it with our clients. But most clients are caught by surprised when it happens. I think I want to just share a couple of things just to bring that up so people can be mindful of when they're dealing with their customers and if they are the right customer. I think first is, with the PPP money, and some people think they have cash and now they're out there looking for contracts and POs to do work and sell it. You have the money and you're excited. Then there's the PPE side of things where people will put in purchase orders. We've had clients where they received bad purchase orders. They didn't realize that they were not good, and even start fulfilling them and ship it. And it goes out and they realize, oh my God, I shipped it to some warehouse down the street where someone else is going to get the products and resell them, and I never get paid. But these are things that we have discovered for our clients because we have the risk management tools in place and we can mitigate this risk for us. But some of these clients may never recover those products. So there is I would say be on high alert for the clients that are out there doing product sales, especially services, sort of kind of protected from that. But product is really important that you vet your customers and the POs that you're receiving before you fulfill the order. Because you have the cash from PPP, you don't also want to just spend it on something that you would never get back. And also I've seen folks that have the PPP, and obviously most of it should go to the daily operations and payroll. And then, you have to worry about also paying for the supplies like Laura mentioned, where you have your suppliers wanting for you to pay upfront. Some of that, like she said, you could use your line of credit and then be able to do that. And most of it is not paid back to you immediately. And that's where NOWaccount comes in, where you're able to put in you have it. So you're more comfortable taking that capital you have to prepay the order and sell it. As soon as you sell and ship, you can put it on NOWaccount. That timeline helps you also pay attention to acquiring more business. So I think strategically, a lot of our clients that will even switch gears and pivot it to the PPE industry, that's what they've done. They had some of the money and then they were able to prepay the orders, but they knew that if they put it on NOWaccount, they don't have to wait 45 days and run out of the capital they had in the first place. So when they give us that invoice, we pay them. And mind you, we're not paying you the cost of what you spent on acquiring. This is how much you sold to your client or customer. So you've gotten your capital back, your investment back, and your margin right away, so you can focus on more sales and be able to grow your business. So a lot of our clients have used it for that purpose, to grow their business in this climate of COVID, because a lot of people are not around to tell the success stories. But we have our clients that were able to quickly jump on the PPE business and be able to, use their PPP money or any capital they have to do the prepayments, get the supplies out, get the orders, deliver them, and immediately give us those invoices. We get to pay them, and they're off to selling another big order, containers and everything that you could think of. So to me, the growth strategy was the most important thing for a lot of our clients, and it's the smartest way. They did it to survive and go through. And we had a webinar, I think a while back, with Sarah hosting, where clients were very excited about being on NOWaccount and were able to keep their business flowing and stay in business and can tell their stories today, unlike a lot of businesses that close their doors. So I think those were one of the most important stories for me, because the small businesses are the core of our economy. And if NOWaccount is there to make sure that they stay in business and are around to tell their stories, I think we'll fulfill our duty on that end. So that's one thing. Yeah, I'm really excited about those. And
Yeah, that's great. And then the two things I think I would add, and then we'll kind of open it up for questions, is we have seen on the positive side a large increase in the focus, both from government agencies and even more importantly, private industry, focusing on supplier diversity. So, there's certainly been a recognition that not only is it important for large companies to hire women and minorities and veterans, et cetera, but it's also important to procure from them. And so that's a huge opportunity, right? There's going to be more opportunities, I think, in the coming year than ever for women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses and LGBTQ-owned businesses to secure these large contracts. The bigger challenge is, what do you do when you get the contract, right? Then you're the dog that caught the car. Mm-hmm. And what we were, recently we've been talking to some of these large companies that we partner with, and what we've explained to them is giving the contract to that disadvantaged business is awesome, but it's just the first step. Because if you give them the contract and then you take 90 days to pay, the very business you were trying to help, you could end up killing. And so I think all too often that happens is, those of us that have a disadvantaged business, because of our status, we qualify for these great contracts and we rush out and we get them. And then all of a sudden we realize, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to get paid for 60 or 90 days. And so we're unable to deliver on the contract at the level of quality. And so what happens? You don't get the second contract. And your goal was never to just get the first contract and stop, right? Your goal was to continue on and grow and take on more and larger contracts. So we work with supplier diversity groups, like companies like Coca-Cola. We also work with, various government agencies, because we want you to be positioned not to just get the first contract, but to knock it out of the park so that you get the second one and the third one, and then the fifth one is even bigger. And so really, as you think about positioning your business to take advantage of these opportunities this year, now's the time to build out your toolbox so that you're ready when that RFP comes out. You're ready to respond and, get a larger piece of a contract. The other thing we've also heard from a lot of our clients that are doing more and more federal contracting is that because NOWaccount is a merchant service, and it is not a loan or a financing tool, the fee that we charge is a merchant service fee. In many federal contracts, merchant service fees, wire fees, ACH fees, those are allowable expenses for reimbursement, which if you had a line of credit, interest is not. Financing costs are not allowable for reimbursement. So what we're now hearing from some of our clients is not only is NOWaccount getting me paid faster, but it's actually allowing me to be more profitable on my contract. So just a couple of things we've also heard recently. And with that, what I'm going to do is stop sharing so we can see faces again, and we can open it up for questions.
I think we had a question, and Earl answered the question, says yes. The question was, can NOW work with women-owned small businesses that are doing business with federal government? And yes, Earl answered that. But I wanted to add something to that, and to piggyback on what Laura just said. Just yesterday, I had a call with one of our clients that actually has a federal contract, and she has a janitorial service and facility management company. She does work for the embassies, and she has one international. So she recently got a contract, and her question was, well, I have to put people out there to go and work. I have to pay them in 2 weeks and I don't get paid for 30 or 45 days. And so she's like, what am I going to do? I was like, well, she had the money to pre-fund, obviously, and put the people out there. She was, well, I have to bill on the 30th because that's what they told me. I have to bill monthly. Can I give that to you on that same day? Well, yes, you've already done the work. So for her, it was a huge relief to know that the next round of people she's going to put on, she will have the money to pay them. So that way she puts it on NOWaccount. And she's been with us for 3 years. She has that one contract, but this one is bigger. So she was just a lot more nervous about not having enough money to make payroll. So to your question, Erica, that was her biggest worry, that she has the contract. She can get those folks out there. She's literally playing a staffing company too, mind you. So she's putting them out there, and they're not going to sit there and wait for 4 weeks to get their paycheck. She has to pay them every 2 weeks. So we would get that down. She has to pre-fund it up front, but the moment she bills that 30-day invoice, now that we're giving her money ahead, she's good to complete her $4 million contract. So that comfort for her allows her to finish this job. And now she can show the government that she has the capacity to actually get another contract, because that's another problem that our small business owners have, and especially minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. They start smaller, and most of the time they have to tag on to someone else that have more of the capacity, which doesn't really help them. It's like they're subcontracting and they don't get a big piece of the pie. So now that she started, and we can actually give you a confirmation letter with your bids, for example, that shows the government that even if it was a capacity of $100,000 and you turn that 7 times, that you can fund that $700,000, and we can give you more, obviously. She had that first for the first contract she had, but now she got the contract because she's already in. And the problem is, can she sustain with that? And the answer is yes, because she's had the NOWaccount already there, set and ready to go. everything is set up. Sam is set up. Her payments are coming to us, and it's an easy flow. So I was happy to talk to her, and I was happy that I was able to give her the answer she needed to hear, because she was like, I was excited, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't have the money. So in 2 weeks, she will have an invoice ready, and then we'll be able to pay her upfront to go ahead and hire more people and then get the job. And hopefully next year she will have a bigger contract after the year ends, because they renew it every year. So.
Yeah. And Haddy, I think that's an important point too. One of the areas that we see a lot of clients benefit is that kind of services / staffing side of a business. Because again, there's always a mismatch if you have to make payroll twice a month, or every 2 weeks, and sometimes that's even 3 payrolls in a month. But your customer may not pay, but monthly or every 45 days or every 60 days. And so once you start using something like a NOW account, you get paid immediately, so you can build up that cash that you need to go after that next contract. So, or to Haddy's point, go back and get a bigger piece of the existing contract, which we have seen as well.
Yep, most definitely.
Yeah. Any other questions? I've got Haddy, you're on mute.
Oh, now I was going to say, until I see another question, just one thing on the noise, the procurement side of things. When you have that with the line of credit, I think I would like to just stress that is really important if you were to have a line of credit to help fund your orders. The one thing that I wanted to also point out is that NOW account does work side by side with banks. So if you have a line of credit, you can have a NOW account on the side. And we've seen where some people say, well, if I want to go to the bank, I can't have you. And so even if you came to us first and have a NOW account and have to go back and get a line of credit, if the banker tells you that you have to close your NOW account, we're a payment company, we're not factoring, and we can subordinate to the bank. So we can sign a subordination agreement so you can get the line of credit also to pre-fund the POs that you need to fund before you actually ship and deliver to come to a NOW account. So I think I like to point that out to a lot of the people, especially government contractors that get this procurement agreements to fund. So.
Yep. And one other thing I also would suggest, we've had a couple of clients recently that have not only used NOW account to deal with a contract they already have, but they've used NOW account as a sales tool to go out and win a contract. So for example, we had a client, minority-owned business, who went to a pre-bid meeting for a local project that was going on in Atlanta with the city of Atlanta. And while he was sitting in that pre-bid, information meeting, the contractor basically said, look, we're going to require net 60 terms. Now he said the whole room, most people were like, oh, can you pay us a deposit? Can you do a little bit up front? Can you do X, Y, and Z? And he said, because I knew I was getting paid in 2 days anyway, I marched right up and I said, I'll do net 60. And so he actually won that competitive bid because he was willing to offer terms that all of the competitors, the other minority businesses, couldn't offer. And we've had some clients go to a customer, and let's say they require net 30. They'll go to them and say, I'll give you net 60, but there's a surcharge for that. Or I'll give you net 60, but I'm going to need a larger piece of the contract to give you that. And so there's a way that you can use terms to trade up to a bigger contract or better pricing, because they don't know you're getting paid in 2 days anyway. So when you offer them net 60, they think that's a huge offer. They think you must be a strong company, and they're willing to give you something for that value, even though you're not really waiting 60 days. So just a way that you could also use it on the sales side of your business. So I see a question. Have you presented to NDIA or Women in Defense? We have not presented to those specific groups. We've done a lot with SBA. We've done a lot with, the women's centers. We've done a lot with the MBDA, which is the Minority Business Development Centers that are part of the Department of Commerce. And we've worked with other organizations like, NMSDC. And when we started our company, we were women certified through WeBank. But no, we haven't presented to those groups, and we love sharing our story and our advice.
Laura, one more thing as on the credit side and winning a bid, the business intelligence side of things. I just wanted to share, as a risk person, I think it's really important for a lot of our customers and clients. Know your client or know your customer is very important these days. I mentioned the risk involved in getting orders that are no good, but on top of that, there's a service. Part of using NOWaccount is that business intelligence that we give you, the credit intelligence on your customers. And some of that is you could start doing business with them and have a contract. This is non-government, for example. And we could come back and tell you that they cannot be approved for like $100,000 invoice. Instead, it's $50,000, or not approve them at all. I think it's really important for our clients to have that information and the credit intelligence to continue doing business with that customer. Now, the client can choose to continue doing business when we decline it, but the information given back to our clients is really important in decision making. I mean, we talk about suppliers giving prepayment agreements. You as a client of NOW can decide to do that and reduce the risk by having that agreement with your customer too. Have them give you a prepayment and then you put the rest on terms. So I think part of NOWaccount is not just coming to get that financing. It's part of growing your business and managing your day-to-day business to reduce the risk in your business.
Well, and Haddy, I think another important point when it comes to risk, so one of the things we've seen a huge increase in since COVID is not only, as Haddy mentioned, the risk of like a fraudulent purchase order, but we're also seeing fraud related to payments. And so, for example, you could have a business where someone, kind of gets into your email, and it's not even high tech. I got to be honest. It's not a high tech hacker. It's just, they prey on our human behavior and our habits. So for example, when you get some of those emails that say you need to, redo your Microsoft password because it's expired, sometimes that's not actually Microsoft. And so you put in a new password, and now a fraudster can get in, and they don't steal money from you, but they watch your email. And for many small businesses, you might email your customer an invoice. And on that invoice, it has your remittance address, which is, an account at the local credit union or at Chase Bank. They can email your customer from your inbox, so it's you, and tell them that you've set up a new account at Bank of America and they need to remit the payment there. So we have seen clients, before they use NOWaccount, come to us and say, oh my gosh, a fraudster told my customer to pay the wrong account. I never got paid, but my customer's saying we already paid, we're not paying again. And so they're in a bad position. Like Haddy said, we manage that well. We look for that every day. So when you use NOWaccount, we give you this lockbox, this account that your customers remit payment to in your name. They still make the check out to you, et cetera. But we know how to manage that with your customers so that they don't ever pay the wrong place. And so we have these steps in place to protect our clients, the small businesses, to protect their customers, and to protect us, obviously. So just know that there is, I think when people think of like cyber fraud, they think of hackers getting into, Target or Equifax or Home Depot, and they think, well, I'm a small business, I'm too small for anybody to care. More money is stolen every year from small businesses than all those big hackers. And it's because they get in and they steal, $10,000 here and $20,000 there. And each one is small, but it's not small to you. And in aggregate, they're willing to be very patient if they can pull out $60,000 and make a good income for the year. So know that there is a lot of what's called remittance fraud going on. And so without knowing it, we built NOWaccount to get people paid faster, but it also turns out that the infrastructure we built protects our clients from all of that payment risk that's out there.
That's for sure.
All right. Any other Any other questions?
I think I didn't see a question, but one thing I wanted to also point out, especially for startup businesses, is to make sure that as you work on building your business and getting these contractors, some people tend to forget that part of getting credit, getting a line of credit, and getting funding and financing is building good credit history for your company. Just like your own personal credit scores, you have to make sure that your business is building a credit history too in order to qualify for these products. You want to make sure that if you have a good history, then your financing options are more reasonable, cheaper, and not super expensive, because you will go to some other merchant cash or other alternative financings that would charge you about 30% or so. So you want to make sure that you're building your credit, getting a card that is reasonably, reasonable fees, and manage it accordingly. Don't run it up, managing accordingly, and have bills paid so they can report that back. A lot of us use SBFE scores, small business financial exchange data that is linked to either Equifax or DNB to be able to qualify our clients. You can have your own history, and some companies would look at that, but it's very important to prepare yourself to get to the point of being able to get the right financing for your business. To Laura's point at the beginning, if you're looking for the financing and you know what you need it for to get the right financing tool, you have to prepare yourself ahead of time to get there. So I think as you think about it and prepare yourself to get there, it's good to plan ahead and build your toolbox, like she said. Be able to make sure that when that time comes, you'll be able to get a product good enough for your service that you have to offer. And hopefully that would be NOWaccount.
No, and Haddy, as we both know, the hardest thing for us is, every day somebody calls us or applies for a NOWaccount in a panic. And they're like, oh my gosh, I have this order, but I have to be able to ship it this week. That is really hard to do. And we can mobilize and try to get things in place quickly for you. But to be honest, when people come in a panic like that, our initial thought is, are you managing your business very well? Because if you're behind the 8 ball and you're scrambling, then that probably means you didn't get things in place ahead of time. So I always tell people now that the time to get things in place is when you don't need them yet. And I know that's a little counterintuitive. The easiest time to get money is when you don't need money. The easiest time to get tools in place is when you don't need them right away, because you might need them a month from now or 2 months from now or 3 months from now. And scrambling almost never gives you the best answer. So again, am I using the right type of capital? Am I using it at the right time? And am I using it for the right use? And so if you get those things mixed up, your business becomes a hobby. Hobbies are expensive. We all have them. They don't make money, but they're fun. And I don't think you want your business to be a hobby. So, make sure you take the steps you need to get that stuff in place before you really, really need it. All right. Well, it looks like we've got just a few minutes left that we're willing to stay on if anybody has any questions that pop in mind. But I also know that the most valuable resource any small business owner has is time. And you usually have less of that than you have capital. So if you need to jump, that is fine as well. But we're here if you have any other questions.
How do I get a copy of the recording? Because for some reason it did not allow me to get in on the call.
Oh, okay.
So I got a copy of it.
Sandra, it will be emailed to you within the next couple of days. We also have a YouTube channel. I'm going to put the link in the chat so that way you will be able to see it when it's uploaded on YouTube. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel. We just got it up and running, and subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell so that you'll get that as well.
Okay.
That's great. I love that you have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's actually easier sometimes to share the files. It's just a link instead of a huge file to share with people. Love it.
All right. Well, if there isn't any more questions, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to tell Laura and Haddy, thank you, because you know, this was oh, I can't get the video to work. Anyway, I was not aware of this wonderful resource that you have to offer, and we had several years ago a woman who went out, who launched a business. And she used to work for a government contractor and launched her own contracting business. And she had this gift. I'm telling you, it's like within a year's time, she had, I think, about 6 or 7 contracts.
Wow.
I mean, they were coming in faster than
Wow.
she could have ever imagined. But she got into that situation where she could not afford to pay for the staff as quickly as the business was coming in. And it also, every connection that we tried to make was charging more than the 3%. They were
Yep.
charging so much, it wasn't worth it. Unfortunately, it got to the point where it was very discouraging.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just so thankful that this resource is here, that we know about it. And I definitely want to share it and get it out to those women who could benefit from it.
I think you're right. More businesses grow out of business than go out of business. And that's so unfortunate, because it was a good idea. It was a good business. It's a good businesswoman. It's just, they outgrow. It's like getting over your skis, and nobody should have to go through that.
Yes. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.